Welcome to the Humourology Podcast with me, Paul Barros, and my glittering lineup of guests from the worlds of business, sport and entertainment, who are here to share their wisdom and their use of humour with you. Humourology is the study of how humour can dramatically improve your business success and your life. Humourology puts the fun into business fundamentals, increases the value of your laughing stock, and puts a punchline back into your bottom line.
But I'll give you a recent example of where I went over the top, and actually it was to do with being manic. I was manic at the time, but it is quite funny. I have again in the depression book. I talk about in the chapter about Fiona. I have this habit when I'm happy, really, when I'm kind of firing and on all cylinders. But that's when there's a danger I become manic, and I do this thing which I think is funny, where to the tune of Flower of Scotland, wherever we are, I just describe the scene, and I can do it about absolutely any situation, you know? So if I do, you know, oh, flower of humourology, with Paul Barros, we're talking about it, because he makes a podcast and he writes books too. So I can do that any situation, right? Thank you. So I was doing this thing where at the height of the Dominic Cummings Barnard Castle thing, the stuff of comedy for lots of comics made a lot of good gags out of that. We were walking on the heath and I was doing lots of Flower of Scotland stuff. And then I thought, and it was all about Dominic Cummings, right? And Boris Johnson and Barnard Castle. And then I got bored with Flower of Scotland. I started to do other national anthems. Did the Russian, the American, the South African, the French, the German. And by the time I got here, back to my office and at home, I was so kind of on it and thinking I was so funny, and this was just, the public need to see this now. So I decided to do God Save the Queen. I put a picture of the Queen up on the wall. I had a flag, like they've all got flags now. And then this is where I took it to. And so I'll give you the song first. It was Boris Johnson singing, God save our gracious Dom, long live our noble Dom. Oh, I love Dom. Send him to me, the press, that will clear up the mess. Like Prince Andrew at Pizza Express, God save our Dom. Right. And this is where, so I thought moderately funny, right? Okay. Where I went over the top is that because I was pretending to be Boris Johnson in front of the Queen, I put on a suit and tie and I put on my brother's Guards medals, right? His military medals. Now, you don't do that. You don't do that. And funny enough, within minutes, I realised I'd gone too far. And then it's important, friendship's important. I got a call from an old mate of mine I used to work with, Martin Sheehan, and it's a football thing. He always calls me Gaffer. And the phone went, it just said, Gaffer, do us a favour, turn your phone off for a few days. And he knew I was in that state where I was going to overstep the mark. So, yeah, I do overstep the mark, yeah.
Well, it's a great pleasure to have you here, Deborah. And we were talking about the Dragon's Den straight away, so that's where I want to start. The people who pitch on to the Dragons manage to create a wide range of emotional responses, from frustration and anger to surprise and confusion, and of course, laughter. Aside from the obvious fact that the deal has to be good, do you think that getting the Dragons to laugh increases their chances of success?
I don't know about that. We've had some real fun in the den with people who have walked away with no deal at all. But I do think that laughter creates a bridge. You know, it creates an atmosphere. And also, I like to see a relaxed picture. And I think that once they've got the Dragons laughing, they're more likely to be able to get their message across. So I think laughter plays a part. But, listen, we're Dragons. We're not just going to invest because we find somebody funny.
But do you think it actually shifts the way people feel about somebody? I mean, because one of the prerequisites, of course, is you are going to have to work with these people over the long term. So you presumably want to have some kind of bond with them, some kind of rapport.
you're absolutely right. There needs to be an empathy. You need to look at somebody and think, actually, I want to do this. I don't have to. It's not my job. I'm an investor. I've got thousands of opportunities to invest. Do I want to do this? And humor definitely plays a part in that. I'm forever saying, I don't get laughter lines like this without laughing a lot. And across all of my businesses, we have fun.
I mean, people's minds work in different ways. I mean, I am a big fan of dogs. So I had to do this whole thing in my shows about dogs, not drugs. And dogs are really good for your health because if you hug a dog, it reduces your blood pressure. They also reduce your cholesterol by eating your food. They look at you and keep looking at you until you take them out for a walk. Your husband doesn't look at you. Your doctor doesn't look at you. Your wife doesn't look at you. A dog looks at you. And you have to take it out for a walk twice a day. So whether you want to, that's in your diary. It's in your diary. You got green fields, you got blue sky. Every other dog walker you meet is a friend. So you've got an immediate social circle. Dogs keep you supple as you bend over to pick up the poo. And if you're too depressed to put your pants on in the morning, they lick your testicles. You don't get that at the doctors, do you? Well, you might. It's private patients only. But generally, the doctor won't lick your testicles. Prozac won't lick your testicles. A dog will do that for you twice a day if you let it. So stick that in your diary. I get your point. So some people like diarising things and some people like improvising things. But my diary is my dogs. I get up and I walk the dogs and I know I'm going to walk them in the evening. And I really love. Sometimes I'll listen to something like the Humourology Podcast, which I can strongly recommend. Sometimes I'll listen to the birds and the bees as I'm walking along. So I think absolutely diarising it is important, particularly if you have a busy job. You've got to force yourself to do it. I play football very badly on a Thursday night, and it's a bit late for me, and I don't sleep well afterwards because I'm too hot and sweaty, and I always think, I don't want to go. And every time I go, I absolutely love it. I don't play very well, but they call me Chopper after the legendary Chopper Harris.
Chopper Harris, yeah.
All the young ones but they leave me alone now. I don't like people slipping the ball. Anyone nutmegs me, they're in trouble. But I've calmed down a bit since those days. So I think you need to diarise and have things sort of say the Wednesday Elders is my sensible drinking group. That's on a Wednesday. And so I have these little things built into my weekly routine that I think really help and I look forward to.
From a psychological standpoint, I think that is really important that people understand it, because I have similar things. I've got my running club and I used to play football as well with people. But that's all about creating little communities, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, I think that's right. Yes, again, it comes back to relationships and the strength of relationships and feeling you belong. Belonging is a very important part of the human nature. And also, I tell young kids particularly, I see kids with fatigue who are just getting back into life and they're bored and they're sitting in their room staring at their screen. And I always tell them to volunteer. Volunteer is brilliant because you're submerging yourself in somebody else's shit rather than your own. And it gives you really good communication skills and a sense of worth. And I've seen so many kids resurrect their lives through volunteering in a care home or for the NHS or for a charity. It looks really good on the CV, but it teaches you to communicate with anyone and establish relationships with anyone.
Remember that I think very, very few people can do it to the level you've done it all your life. But is it, we all know that it's a lot of work, but is it also some kind of superpower that you can turn on that, I think Marvel are going to be calling you soon about.
Well, I think humour is so extraordinarily helpful, like particularly in work, for me, having been a nurse, and you'll find, I think, the more stressful people's jobs are, the more dark their humour is. And and I've heard some examples of humour which most people would think are like truly shocking, but they're sort of at a level. For example, you don't have to put this in, but I'll just tell you. But I remember someone telling me that somebody they knew who was a policeman, they arrived at a light aircraft crash. And I think everyone on board had been killed. There were about 6 people. And they had to go around the plane and try and identify everyone. So they were taking people's wallets out of their pockets and looking for names and that sort of thing. Anyway, they took one guy's wallet out and he had, some sort of ID there. And they realised that day was his birthday, that the accident had occurred on. So they all stood around his body and sang happy birthday to him.
Wow.
Now that is like, you think, oh my God, that is so horrible and kind of cruel. And so, but I think if you're in a job where you see death all the time, you see people treating each other like shit all the time, you see violence, that's the level of sort of defensive humor that you develop sometimes to deal with something so catastrophic. And you'll find, I think, that surgeons and doctors and nurses are also equally what you might tend to think of as tasteless in their humor, just to deal with it.
It's a survival mechanism. I spent 2.5 years of my life teaching doctors and nurses at Guy's, King's and St Thomas's. And that gallows humor was actually prevalent there and actually useful because it relieved the stress. And it gave them resilience at the end of the day. And it
knitted them together as well as a team, you know. So, yeah, I think it is very useful.
Final question on the Humourology podcast is desert island gags. Oh. You can only take one gag to a desert island. What is it?
I've been telling this gag for 20 years, maybe more. Maybe I heard it 20 years ago and it's been around forever. But it's about the old boy who wants a pair of cowboy boots. He's 80 years old and eventually builds up this confidence to go and buy himself a pair of cowboy boots. He puts them on, he says, oh, these are absolutely great. Really look at the business. And he goes home and his 78-year-old wife's there out in the kitchen. He walks in the kitchen, he says, Ethel, he says, do you notice anything different? So she turns around, she looks at him, she says, no. He says, so he goes upstairs, he takes off all the clothes and all he keeps on is the cowboy boots. And he goes back downstairs and he walks into the kitchen and says, Ethel, do you notice anything different now? She turns around, she says, no. He says, look properly. She goes, well, it was hanging down yesterday, it's hanging down today, and it will probably be hanging down tomorrow. He said, the reason it's hanging down, he said, is because it's looking at my new cowboy boots. And she said, you should have bought a bleeding that.
Much like you, a beautiful gag, beautifully delivered. It's been a beautiful interview.
Thanks, mate.
Harriet. Thank you so much.
Where's your at? Oh, let's cook something.
The Humourology Podcast was hosted by Paul Barros and produced by Simon Banks. Music by Steve Hayworth, creative direction by Les Hughes, and additional research by Helen Sykes. Please remember to subscribe, like, and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. This has been a Big Sky production.